to Infant Nursery Hour.
You want someone to preach to you?
With your host, Glenn Ostland.
You want religion, do you?
It's sharing time.
There will be many willing to preach to you the philosophies of men mingled with
humor.
Yeah.
You can buy anything in this world.
Welcome back to Infants on Thrones. I'm Glenn Ostland, and this is part 2 of my conversation with Tami Whiting, Making Space for Me in a Hostile World, part 2. And if you haven't heard part 1, then what are you doing here? Go listen to part 1. You're not going to understand what's going on. Go listen to part 1, and then listen to part 2. It's amazing. It's amazing. All right, so let's just get right to it, right here, right now. I mean, just the bravery in being real. And saying, yes, there are these social norms that say, don't talk about that kind of stuff. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
We want to pretend that stuff doesn't exist.
Oh, God, we do. I used to speak in high schools.
Yeah.
To all these classes in Michigan. And afterwards, I just tell them the story, basically. Not the way this is written, but still true nonetheless. And I summarize it for them in one class period. And they inevitably, girls would come up afterwards, boys too, but mostly girls. And I could tell by their posture sitting in their desk. And then as they walked up, the way they held their head, I knew what they were, that they were suffering from something similar. And maybe it's not exact story, but it's the feelings, right? So maybe you're not sexually abused, but you're verbally abused,
right.
Or maybe you're treated like nothing or invisible. But the feelings of abuse are the same no matter what kind. And they'd come up and it was their story to tell. So I couldn't say, oh, I see it in you.
Yeah.
But they told me what they could. And being able to tell the whole story now, or the big parts of it, it's just because I want my daughter to grow up in a world where she is free, completely free. And I see that happening a little bit.
Yeah.
But if I can change one part of that future world for her, then I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
If she makes decisions that hurt her or hurt other people, she can own those and then live a fulfilling life afterwards.
Yeah.
And if she is alone and has no hope of real love, she can imagine it, and then it can come because she is open to it. I just don't want girls and women to suffer.
Yeah.
And your daughter in my young women's class, I had so much love for my girls, but I really, really had just compassion for her because, and part of that is her personality. She's very open.
Yeah, she is.
But you want all girls and women to be safe. Yeah. I want all girls and women to be safe. And if I have to just put that out there and tell my stories in order for that to happen, then I'm going to freaking do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I, this isn't really about my daughter, Shaylee, and her story either, but you know what happened to her when she was in high school, and she had things that were happening right under my nose, and I had no idea. No idea that these things were going on. And
well, you're not taught in family home evening to ask those kinds of questions. Yeah. I mean, the whole system is set up so that nobody's going to get real in any given moment. I mean, and she was in a safe home, relatively speaking.
Yeah. Not a perfect home, but
no, I mean, but nobody's home is perfect.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Nobody's perfect.
Yeah. So let's move the story forward and talk about QJ, because that's a significant part in it. So QJ, that's the name, right? I'm remembering.
Yeah, it's QJ. It sounds I feel bad just saying his name.
Yes. So you're 22. How old was he?
He was 16.
And how did you get to know him? That wasn't clear to me from, like, I know he was there. There were a group of friends.
Yeah. So I had a job at the grocery store.
Okay.
In
Yeah,
Michigan.
right.
And he was a bagger and I was a cashier.
Okay.
And there was, it's a young person job. Like at 22, I was kind of aging out for that job,
Mm-hmm.
It's a high school job.
And he and his friends wanted to buy beer or something.
Yeah, it was my last day of work and, an excuse to drink when you're in high school, right? So I bought him a bottle of alcohol and he,
and there was something where like they convinced you to get that it was whiskey and it was actually kind of like a fifth of whiskey and you didn't even know that it was that big or came in that size or something like that.
No, yeah. Like I don't even know what a fifth is. Like it was just a bottle. So I was at the liquor store and I went in and the kids were in the car. Gosh, I can call them kids now. And I asked for the Southern Comfort, which is what he wanted. And the guy.
So you didn't sell it to him as that you went into the.
I went into the store and bought it
for them. Okay.
Brought it out to the car. So the cashier at the liquor store asked me if I wanted a fifth or a smaller bottle. Yeah. And I didn't know. I think I actually asked him, well, what's a fifth? And he pointed to the two sizes. And in that moment, I thought, well, when I was 16, I would have loved to have had the bigger bottle because it would have lasted longer because you don't know when the next time somebody's going to buy for you. Mm-hmm. Spoken like a true teenage alcoholic. Anyway, So I buy it and I bring it out and we go to this party. And this is the first time I've had alcohol and been out of the grandma's house, for 3 months. And it's this outdoor party in a field, like a hill kind of. It was dark, so it's really hard to describe. But anyway, he walked off and the other kids walked off and I kind of leaned against the car and drank my beer. And I could see him. There was light. I don't know if it was the moon or somebody's headlights, but I could see him and he was standing in front of these boys and they were talking to him and like laughing. And he, his fist was tight, the hand that wasn't holding the bottle. And he put the bottle to his mouth and he drank the whole thing.
And they were egging him on, right? Like they were kind of teasing him, like
teasing him. You could see it, like, and there was 3 of them. I don't know. And he dropped the bottle, and there's this. I could still hear like this big thud, the bottle just dropping into the dirt. And he staggered kind of back, and then he fell face down in the dirt. And those boys came over and stood around him, and other people came and stood around him. And one of them kicked him, and they were shouting. So I went over and I, checked to see if he's breathing. I was screaming for the other boys that came in the car with us. And we like lifted him up and brought him to the car. So he's completely passed out. And we get him in the back seat and he's so tall, like he's as tall as you are. So if you can imagine, like getting that boy into the back of the car and like wrapping his legs up so that we can close the door. But the problem was he was face down in the back seat. And so if he had to throw up, he would choke on his vomit. Like I didn't know that. I'd thrown up many times. And so that was a frame of reference. So I kind of knelt over him in the back seat and held him up by his, his belt loops, held up his waist. So he was like shaped like a V. And then when we drove, nobody knew how to get to the hospital. So we stopped at a Burger King parking lot and there was a payphone outside. And we called but the boys didn't want to call because they're underage, and they're afraid.
Mm-hmm.
So I left him and went and called, and the boy said he would hold him up while I was gone. So I got back from calling, got the directions to the hospital, and he's not breathing anymore.
Mm.
So I'm trying to like do something as I'm holding him up, in case there's vomit that needs to come out, and while we're getting to the hospital. And they rush out and they take him and they tell us to go. So we stand there watching this amazing effort, to get him to help, to get him inside the hospital. And then we went home. The boys dropped me off, and I was back at my grandpa's house. And I just laid in my bed with my clothes on and didn't sleep. In the next few days, I called the hospital several times to get an update, but I'm not a family member, so
they wouldn't give you any information.
Right. So they couldn't tell me anything, and I couldn't go there. So that was Saturday night.
And this was in Michigan.
In Michigan. Right. And I'm about to go back to Wisconsin. I had planned on leaving on Wednesday.
Okay, so you had already planned on leaving, and part of the reason for this party was you were leaving your job because you were going to be moving to.
Yeah, I'm going back.
All right.
Yeah. So so it's on the news every night, this story of this boy. He's in ICU and kind of in a coma. And so I get on the bus. I had to take the bus back. Oh, because I crashed my beautiful car, which is in the book.
Into an ambulance, yeah.
Yeah, I hit an ambulance. It was icy. It was a choice.
You had to make a choice. You
had to make a choice.
Right, yeah. That was an interesting section.
Yeah. So I get on the bus at 1:00 in the afternoon on Wednesday. And at 1:00 in the afternoon on Wednesday is when QJ died.
Mm.
But
as you're on the bus leaving.
Yeah. I step on that bus and it goes, and that's when he dies.
And you felt responsible for that too. You felt like if you would have stayed, he would have lived, but since you left, he died.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Because the timing of it.
Yeah.
But so my grandmother sent me a clipping in the mail. So I found out about a week later. And then this random thing happened where I went back to church. Like I did not expect to do that. Well,
so let's tell that story though. So you get to Wisconsin, you get a job at Olin Mills where you're calling people to sell them picture packages.
Yeah.
And you're not meeting your sales quota.
Yeah.
And your boss is hounding you. And so you think, oh wait, there's this woman that I remember from when I was Mormon.
Yeah.
I'm going to call her to try and sell her. And she goes, okay, I'll buy it if you come to church on Sunday.
Yeah, I'll pick you up. Do you need a ride? I'll pick you up. So she picks me up, and I've got this like.
Well, wait, hang on, because this was this was one of those moments as a reader that I've got these mixed emotions of kind of like, how dare she rage, and please save Tami, like it's kind of like the devil on the shoulder whispering one thing, the angel on whispering one thing, and I'm not sure which voice is coming from which one, I don't know, but that like she's kind of manipulating or seeing this as an opportunity, and you're in such a helpless point, and you've got your supervisor, your boss that's like breathing down your neck, quite literally, they're in the room as you're on the phone.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'll do it. And you get the sale so that you can say, let me keep my job.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, so I've got to go back to this place. I don't really have church clothes.
No, I have nothing.
You have like this black tight mini skirt or something like that.
Oh yeah. I mean, it looked really good, but in the framework of where you are, right?
Yeah, right.
There, like a bar is a dark place.
Mm-hmm.
So the lighting is there's an aesthetic to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But church is very bright, and so it stood out for sure.
Yeah.
But she picks me up, and we don't really talk about too much, and then we get there, and I open the door. There's two doors. There's the foyer door, and then there's the outside door, right, with that little space in between.
Mm-hmm.
And I open that door, and this feeling of love.
Right.
I've gone back to this feeling so many times. Like, what was that? And it's I cannot. So I do believe that there are times in your life where there's some kind of universal or I don't want to say divine, but like, some kind of intervention.
Yeah.
To get you on the right path. Right. I do think that was real.
Yeah.
There's no other explanation, because there's no psychological thing happening at this point. It's just me and the door handle. It's just.
Sure. This is the next part that I had marked to read from the book. As you're entering the outside doors, and you say, I pulled open the inside foyer door, and I feel this amazing wave go through me, like love, comfort, whatever it is. It feels amazing. It feels like family. Is this what parental love feels like? I've never felt this before. It isn't like an alcohol high or any drug high I've ever tried. It's clean and honest and happy. I loved that. I loved that, and just the recognition, and even now looking back at it and saying, okay, it's something that was, like meant to be, to get you back on your life back on track, whether it's meant to be or not. That's the role that it played for you. And that this like desire that you had to call your grandpa in the first place, to do the family reunion, even the different relationships that you had with guys that you couldn't really trust, but you still wanted that kind of connect. You felt like you had it here, and it was real and powerful and just so important to you. And it just changes your life and becomes, spoiler alert, such a incredible foundation upon which you can experience the consequence of QJ dying and the things that result, the abortion, like all of these things that had happened. And you've got a place to put that now, that you feel safe and loved and accepted. And for all of the things that we complain about the church about, you can't deny that these group of people in this place, because of the teachings that they received, because of what they were doing, coming together as a family ward unit, they accepted you in, even if it's, like, I'll buy your package if you come to this, like we can nitpick those things.
Yeah. Even if it's marketing, So I get that there's a physiological response to belief.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I could look at all of that and disregard all of it in a scientific way, but I think believing that door handle had some kind of magical, mystical power, for me, it just feels good. It feels nice, and I'm that type of person. Like, I want to believe in Santa Claus, because Santa Claus makes me happy.
Yeah.
But
and so what does that make you do then? That made you be the best Santa Claus for your kids growing up.
Oh, yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. Well, the alternative was, if I failed even a little bit, it felt like I was her. It felt like I was my birth mom.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you keep saying you're calling her your birth mom, which is a little foreshadowing of some things to come. Yeah. But so you become part of this ward, and you talk about what that was like, which I just found really, really beautiful. And my response as I was reading it was, would I feel like that if I went back now? Because there's absolutely this sense of community that I know that I'm the one that walked away from it. I'm the one that rejected it. Yeah. And I haven't been able to replace that intensity of connection with all of the good and the bad that goes with it. And for me, there was just way too much bad. I had to get away from it. But it made me wonder, could I go back? I started thinking about, I could probably go and talk to my bishop. Maybe I could give it a try. Maybe I could see if I could capture this thing that you're describing that really helped you through this? Because I could use some help. I could use some community. I could use some love and some support, and a place to pour my own desire to love and support into as well.
And a place for your spirit to just be.
Yeah.
And to play with that a little bit, explore your own insides a little bit more. I like that too. I just couldn't feel that after a while.
Sure.
Like once you know things, and the bubble is cracked.
Well, and I don't know if this is, might as well. We've touched on it now. I was wondering, should we talk about this later or now? I think one of the things then, because you do explain at the end of the book, that happened in 1992, I think it was now, but then in 2012, I left the church, and here's why. And you kind of give the explanations why. The very real, beautiful, powerful, connecting things that are in the church are become tools for abuse by other people in the church. Not everybody in the church, but there are ways in, like, the things that the leadership does, and where you don't have honesty, you don't have integrity, and it becomes like this carrot that you can have all these wonderful things if you do all these things, other things that for some people make you compromise your own honesty and integrity. And
I think any group organization is like that. It's not just Mormonism, but Mormonism seems to have a special brand of manipulation and control that I just couldn't.
Yeah, but not these women that welcomed you into the ward, and not the ward back in, was it Michigan? You went back to Michigan, so you're in Wisconsin. And then at some point the police come to your door.
Yeah.
And they say, "Do you know why we're here?" And you just say, "Yeah." And they're like, "Well, you need to come with us. Can I go upstairs and get my shoes?" "Nah, come with us now." I had almost the exact experience, when Tracy accused me of the domestic abuse and the police took me out, and I'm like, it was 1:30 in the morning, and like I'd gotten out of bed. Can I go get my wallet? Can I put socks on my feet? Can I put something on other than my pajamas? "No, come with me." I did get the handcuffs. You didn't get the handcuffs.
No, not in that time.
Not that time.
Yeah.
And so they take you in, you get arrested, and then there's an extradition back to Michigan where they want to charge you for involuntary manslaughter, which is a felony.
Yeah.
I'm
there for the weekend.
In jail.
Yeah. Okay. And then I have my hearing, and that's when they tell me that what I'm being charged with.
Yeah.
But he trusts me to get there on my own. He says, "Will you go?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll go today." And he said, "Okay, then we'll release you. But if you don't show up, we put a warrant out for your arrest."
Right.
But at this point, like, I had been repenting all summer. And the only thing I felt burdened by was, I mean, it's a pretty big thing, but
sure.
Well,
you felt burdened by the abortion and felt burdened by
QJ's death. Right. Yeah. So I felt like I had killed two people. And I couldn't pay for that, like just with a conversation with my bishop, or I couldn't pray that away. Like it wasn't, there was a barrier there, and I felt lighter with everything else, but this thing was just so heavy. And so I was kind of happy to do it, like, let's get this over with, and let's figure this out so that I can, like, live the rest of my life and maybe not be so burdened.
And I think trying to remember. So you went back to church that first day, you felt that love, you felt that acceptance. Was that also when you met the bishop of that ward and they said, well, maybe we'll need to hold a disciplinary council, or did that happen later? It was the same day. That was
the very first day that I went back. Yeah.
And you didn't care.
I was totally fine with it.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
help me unburden myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was like 6 guys around the room, and Bishop was in the middle, and I was in the middle looking at him. And there was no conference table. It was just chairs. And I just remember myself, telling the story, the whole thing. And
And this is before the police came, right?
Yeah, this is
Okay.
before like the start of the process of repenting. So like I tell the story, they give me a Book of Mormon, like the very beginnings of, and I was so animated and happy to be there. Like happy to be dumping, I guess, downloading all this stuff to them. Anyway, they thought about it and they prayed 3 times. It was kind of like just walking up against the wrong door, but they kept praying for an answer. Like, what should we do? Should we, disfellowship her? Should we excommunicate her? And the answer kept coming back, no. And then finally they settled on a period of, what do you call it? A temporary period of
probation, or something like that, where you can't pray in public, or
exactly. No teaching.
Play in classes, no teaching. Yeah.
Just sit there. And I was like, cool.
I don't want to do any of that anyway.
Yeah. I didn't even know I could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So then I go back to Michigan, and I report to the Livingston County Jail, and I sign a paper and I leave, and that was it. And I had to wait like 8 or 9 weeks. And
people in the ward in Wisconsin communicated with people in the ward where you were going to. So you had this community to go into.
Well,
right?
I did eventually. So at first I just went to my grandparents' house.
Oh, okay.
Because they're the only people I know. And that's when my grandpa got in bed with me in the middle of the night.
Oh, right.
So I called my bishop in Wisconsin. I said, I can't do this. This is what's happening. So Mike.
And by the way, I was so impressed with the way that you handled that in saying, Grandpa, I'm uncomfortable with this. Leave. And he did.
Get out.
Get out. And that you would, even there, you're starting to see this character arc of like, wait, I have more self-respect. I recognize that I don't just have to let you do this to me. I'm going to say something.
I have an option.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was just happy that he did it.
Right.
He got up and left.
Yeah.
Because I was terrified.
Yeah.
And the rest of the night I couldn't sleep. Like I kept thinking he's going to come back.
Right.
That's what happens in nightmares, right? They just keep coming back, and he didn't. But then I wasn't going to wait for another night, so I left.
Yeah. And they arranged for you to meet with the bishop of the ward there, who was Bishop Lowe. Yeah.
So I went back to Wisconsin. My friend Mike, he came and picked me up, and then the bishop in Wisconsin calls the bishop in Michigan and he asked for volunteers from the ward. Who can put this girl up until she goes to jail? And you can imagine that just didn't go over very well. Like, I mean, who do you even ask? Who's going to say yes to that? So nobody said yes to that. And the bishop called back and said, well, she can come stay with us.
Mm.
And he had 5 kids, a wife, So I go back to Michigan and I stay at their house for 9 weeks waiting to go to jail. And that's when I started like speaking in high schools and doing things like that.
How did that happen with the speaking in high schools? So
the kids of this family that I was staying with, the bishop's family, their ages were 5 to 16. And the 16-year-old, of course, had heard about this, and all of them knew why I was there. Mm-hmm. And I spoke like in young men's at the ward, and then they started asking me to speak in like the stake. And so they had these big gatherings.
So the probationary period of you not being able to speak had obviously lifted at this point.
Yes, it had. So just in time. So I was speaking in like 3, I guess the stake took up like parts of 3 counties. And so, and then the girl, the 16-year-old Julie in this bishop's family, she asked her teacher about me speaking in her class. And so that's how that started. So I started speaking in her class, and then I did another class, and then another school, and then it was 3 counties of schools. And
what were you telling? What was the main message?
Main message is don't drink, because this is what can happen. But also just telling them my whole story. Like, this is how I started drinking, and this is my shit life. And
when you say whole story?
Yeah, I start with a diagram of, like, you know how the genealogy diagram with the man and the woman and then a line down and then there's their kids. So I start with this diagram, and then I start going, well, and he slept with her with these giant arrows. And then she slept with him. You
talked about your grandpa impregnating your mom? Oh, wow. Yeah. And they were still asking you to come back and talk more about it. Wow.
So that's the introduction, is just, this is like, and everybody's got their own crazy stuff that's happening at home. And so it's not a reach. It's not a stretch at all. And, and the kids had to write letters back. Like, I'd get manila folders full of letters on lined paper from these kids. Most of them just, thank you for coming to our class. But then some of them were mad. Like, they felt like I was a murderer and should be.
Because some of these people knew QJ. And in fact, even his parents sat in on one of your.
Well, his parents were there at the when I went to court. And
is that what it was? Okay. So it wasn't one of these talks. It was just at the sentencing. Okay.
Yeah. That was 9 weeks later. So this is what I hung out totally with the missionaries too. There were sisters and elders in the ward, and I gave them rides, and we hung out in P days, and I went tracting with them. Like, I was pretty much the Mormon rock star for young adults, And then I went to the sentencing, and all these kids showed up. These teenagers. There were 17 kids at my sentencing. The parents let them out of school, and the judge asked, is this try and manipulate the court? And he got kind of angry. So QJ's parents were sitting off to the left, off to my left, and all these kids are in the back, and I'm just bawling my eyes out, wearing my Sunday best, and I was not sentenced to a felony. I was sentenced to a misdemeanor of providing alcohol to a minor, which is 90 days maximum in county jail. Yeah. And so I got the full 90 days.
Well, except they like the way I pictured this was very, like, kind of dramatic, like that. What's that black and white movie about, like, yes, Victoria, there really is a Santa Claus. You know that one where they, like, dump the bag of mail on the judge, and he's if there's no Santa Claus, then what are these letters for? But I pictured that as, like, the judge was given all of these letters, maybe not all of them, but a lot of these letters that you had received from doing this, public outreach. Here, I'm going to tell you my story. I'm going to and the judge is like, oh, okay, I see that I kind of see where she's at. And
and there was a letter from my bishop in Wisconsin, and a letter from the Relief Society president. Like, he had a lot to look at. And I was just hoping that he would see a little bit, but I didn't. I felt like whatever the decision is, I'm totally down for whatever you're going to give me. It was just really hard to be in the room with his parents.
Sure.
That was super hard. Because he was their only child. They never had more children. And so that was...
the other reaction I had as I was reading about this, I was kind of upset that you were being the scapegoat for the death when the friends were the ones that were egging him on to drink it all. You could not have provided alcohol to a minor, but that's not what killed, like, in the chain of events of things that killed him. That's down the line. It's part of it, but there were some other things that were going on. And for you, it just felt unfair to me, but I have an affection for you as my friend, so I'm very defensive of you, and, like, thinking, why should Tami have to bear the weight of all of this?
Well, okay, so here's, those boys and the kids that stood around him and all that. I mean, they were just kids. Sure. You remember being a stupid teenager? Like, we were all stupid teenagers, and
I'm a stupid teenager now. I'm just almost 47 years old.
Well, I mean, your brain's at least firing at a more normal rate. So I don't blame them either.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just something that happened. It was just horrible. But the truth of it is that kind of thing can happen every weekend.
Yeah.
In every location. I mean, this is our climate. This is like what can happen with alcohol. I feel like alcohol is just a damaging kind of I mean, I've had, since I left the church, I've had wine and things like that a few times, but my liver
and a pitcher of like we made mojitos once in a big pitcher, and we didn't realize that the rum was just going to sink to the bottom.
Yeah.
And you and my wife Krista kind of discovered that the truth and the reality of that. that was a memorable night. but at any point, so now this family that you'd been staying with, the Lowe's, you developed a really close relationship with them, and at some point they came to you with a proposition. And was this before the sentencing or after the sentencing?
It was a week before the sentencing.
And what did they propose to you?
So we sat down in the front living room, which is, the more formal living room. And I was just sitting on the floor in front of them, and they asked me if I wanted to be adopted.
And you're 22 years old.
Like, I'm 22, but, we'd had, they were kind of on their best behavior because somebody's living in their house, so they'd have family night on a regular basis. And we'd sing those songs that were so painful when I was 9 years old, talking about how you have this great family on earth and God loves you and all of that crazy stuff. And I did not believe that for myself from a very young age. There was an exception to that rule, and I was it. So they would sing, the Lowe's would sing these songs at family night, and it's just very simple and beautiful. And I just remember once just running from the room and going and crying a little bit in the bathroom and coming back because I just needed to reset, because they were so nice, and they weren't abusive, and they fed their kids, and they hugged their kids, and the kids didn't fight with each other too dramatically, and the parents didn't hit each other. It was just, they were still together. Like that just was not my reality. And so it was just amazing to watch. So then here are these two people, these calm, peaceful, like spirit guided people asking me if I want to join their family.
Right.
And they'd ask their kids one by one, they'd asked all their kids first before they even brought it to me. Because if one of their kids said no, they wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
But they all said yes. And so after I was sentenced, I said, could I think about it a little bit? It was just a lot. It was a lot for me to even be asked. And so when I was in jail, I called them from the payphone and I told them yes. That's when I said yes. And you were
so there was like quite at least a week or two, maybe longer.
A week.
Yeah. And you were kind of worried that, maybe now that I'm in jail, they'll change their mind or they won't want me anymore. Like all those things that you were struggling with, right?
So many things, so many thoughts. Yeah. Because the entrenched thoughts for, my 22 years had been negative. So I was expecting something negative.
And this idea to adopt you had come to Sister Lowe, right? Kind of from the first time you went into their house, and she just had this impression.
2 weeks after I arrived, she had this crazy idea that we should adopt her, and she didn't say anything to her husband because it's insane. So about a month later, he had the same idea.
Independently of her?
Independently of her. She never said anything. Wow. And he had this idea, and he brought it to her and said, I'm thinking that we should adopt her. And she had, kind of this moment, like I've been thinking the same thing, maybe we should do it. So then they asked their kids, and then they asked me. So it was just this process. It took about a month, but for them. And so
your 90 days in prison surprisingly ended at 44. You didn't realize that it was going to end. at 44. So you were there for a little under 2 months. And during that time, Sister Lo comes to visit you, and she's on the other side of that bulletproof glass. And that's the moment when I start bleeding out over everything. Like, how in the world, like what? Oh, Tami.
So painful. It was so painful. We were just standing there talking, and then all of a sudden I doubled over in pain, and the police monitoring person is standing behind me, and she catches one arm, and my roommate, my cellmate, she catches my other, and they bring me back. But the look on my mom's, who is now my mom, the look on her face of like, I need to help you and I can't help you. Oh. It was such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Anywho, so then we went back to the cell, and I was vacillating between the bed and the floor and the toilet, and there's blood all over the floor, and I could just keep flushing, and then it's kind of a blur. But my roommate, Alexis, she cleaned it up. Like, they brought a mop and a bucket. They wouldn't bring, they didn't get a doctor or anything like that. So she just kept mopping and mopping until it was cleaned up. And it just kind of quietly happened.
I think I made it all the way through the first 2 seasons of Orange is the New Black before I just couldn't anymore. And so that's what I kept picturing as I was reading that section.
I couldn't watch that past the first 3 episodes.
Oh, I'm sure.
I couldn't watch it because that orange is exactly the orange that I wore. Mm-hmm. And it smelled like you could tell it needed a little vinegar in the wash. Like, it just had a pale.
Yeah.
How many people had worn it before,
And just the lack of compassion when, from the prison guards and other people around you in that state was just,
yeah.
So you get out after 44 days, and then the adoption becomes a real thing.
Yeah.
There's kind of a honeymoon period that kind of ends, and real life starts happening again with some conflict, but still there's that commitment and, that family stuff. And, and at some point, that's when you decide that you want to go on a mission, and you put in your papers.
I'm either going to go on a mission or I'm going to go out to Utah and go to school. Like, those were the 2 things that I had settled on. My parents, I love saying that. Yeah. They sat me down and said, okay, we need to talk about the trajectory of your life. Cause you just can't, I think they were thinking, well, you just can't stay here the rest of your life.
Yeah. Right.
But I would have been happy doing that for longer. I think I lived with them for a year. And then went to Utah. So but those are the 2 decisions that I had nailed down. I was either going to go to Utah and get an apartment and go to school, or I was going to go on this mission. And I really wanted to go on a mission.
Yeah. And this is the next part in the book that I want to read.
Okay.
Because you are preparing yourself for the rejection of, and you say, even though I'm forgiven of everything, have repented and feel completely clean, I still may not be worthy enough.
Yeah.
And I've got to tell you, that part made me angry. Not at you, obviously.
Yeah.
But just at the culture of, I again see the church did this wonderful thing in bringing you in and giving you this sense of family and community that you always wanted. But then what happens when you're in it? That there's now don't ever think that what you're doing is good enough.
Right.
So there's always this perpetual needling of there's more that you've got to do to be worthy, instead of being you know what, now is the time. I can create heaven on earth right here and have it be peace. It's nope. You're not, you're still not worthy. Even though all of these horrendous things that you've done, that you feel like you've done, and that you feel like you've repaid the debt to society, you're free, but you still don't feel worthy enough.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
and that's
they need to keep you on the edge of your chair so that you're poised to help at any moment, because they're not doing the helping. The members of the church are doing the helping.
you're talking about like the leadership, the brethren.
Yes. So they keep you poised on your edge of your seat, anxiously engaged, helping as much as you can, which is both exhilarating and exhausting at the same time. But they have to do that to perpetuate the whole system, right? Keep you going to the temple, keep the money coming in, but also to keep providing for the poor, because they don't actually provide for the poor, right? It's all on the members helping other members, which is,
Which is a good thing.
A little bit right now. Yeah, it is a good thing. And it taught me a lot. But that necessity to keep you not fully baked, not fully complete, right? You're never going to make it until you die.
Yeah.
So then you're anxiously engaged until then.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And there were a lot of factors that went into me becoming disillusioned with the church and eventually leaving. But this was one of the biggest ones, where I would see the value of living a Christ-like life and the lessons that they would give. And it's still to this day, the section in Moroni, what is it? Chapter 7 about charity.
Mm-hmm.
Charity never faileth. And, if you have charity in the end, it's going to be good for you. That's still one of my favorite messages of all time. And it doesn't even matter to me that it was plagiarized from the New Testament. I don't care.
Right.
I still love it. And I appreciate that I got that at a young age. And it, I love that. But when I started seeing that's what they say, but it isn't always what they do.
Right.
And, and that does trickle down into the ward level, where there are some members who are like, no, we are going to be these charitable people. And then there's the other ones that like, we're going to be the ones that remind you that you're never good enough. And like the kind of this push and pull and tug of war that just, for me, it became, I can't keep doing this. But anyway, this isn't really about me and my.
Well, but the stories about these two places, the Wisconsin ward and the Michigan ward, I don't think my story could have happened in any other.
Because you talk about being outside of the mission field, meaning like outside of Utah.
Yeah, there's that.
Or in the mission field.
The ratio of judgmental to sincerely loving there was just so much love and acceptance. So when I was in jail, people from Wisconsin would drive the 5 hours to come and look at a window, at a glass, and talk to me through a little speaker for 10 minutes. Yeah. There was this level of love and support there that I have never felt. Bloomington, where we lived together, that was a great ward. There was a lot of acceptance in that ward, but there was also the ratio was a little higher. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think because it was a university ward, and there was, there was this dichotomy of and you and I both experienced being on both sides of this, because when we came in, we were on the young student side, which would cycle through about every 2 or 3 years. You'd have a different crop. And then there were the established, people. And there was a little bit more of the kind, you have different personalities in both of those groups, but there was a very distinct difference between those groups. But it was a great ward. And it's amazing to me to think of, people that were in that ward, like Jake and Adam Fisher and, what was her name that taught gospel doctrine, and Martha Taysom. Oh God, I love Martha. Martha Taysom. Carol Watson. Yeah. I mean, there's the Katanis, there's people who, so I guess what I think, there was a lot of people in that ward who knew of the problems with the church. Yeah. So I came from it a perspective, like I knew nothing. And then all of a sudden I learned everything. Yeah. For you and for my husband and for other people, I find it amazing because you've known for so long of different issues. Yeah. But you were still there. Like this choosing to stay thing was so interesting to me for a while. Yeah. until I just couldn't anymore. But let's move on with your story, because you don't go on the mission. You do go out to Utah, and these roommates that you don't spend a lot of time talking about, these roommates, but like the things that they're worried about and so concerned about seem so naive and just petty compared to what you've been through in your life. And that just was a stark contrast.
Yeah. So
me.
I think because their lives, I mean, it by no means were Aaron and Kate's lives easy. They both have had their own stories, their own things that have happened, and some of that is really hard. But they
well, thank you for reminding me of that, because I was looking at these as superficial, flat characters that aren't, it's not really their story. So they just play this kind of antagonistic role a little bit to what you're going through in there.
I feel like they were free at some level. They were free to be like silly girls. Mm-hmm. Like even in college, girls can be, silly. And sometimes when I was with them, I felt free to be that. It was a wonderful place to come from. Look out in the world and see it all rosy. And like one time we dressed up in togas and went to the BYU library with these big pieces of paper, it was like a scroll, trying to get dates.
Yeah.
Right. Uh-huh. It's very Provo, but
I wrote a chapter for a book that I don't think ever got published on creative dating practices in Provo, and just all the different things like that you're doing different. We did a date once that was like a scavenger hunt where we went to get our dates, and they weren't at the apartment, but they had left little clues throughout the campus for us to go and find them. Yeah. And it was kind of cute and kind of annoying. And what the funniest thing about it is that we, in the course of us going from clue to clue to clue to clue, we intersected with another group that was doing the same thing, and we got their clue and they got our clue. And so we ended up finding, it was just really, really funny. So it is this little bubble of weird creative dating stuff, which I love. I mean, I have a great affection for.
It's really interesting to non-members when you describe these cool cultural, just fascinating for them. Yeah.
Right. So you eventually meet Steve.
Yeah.
And you're getting to know Steve. And that was so interesting to hear what you said about that. And you're with him one night. And one of the things that you say is that you were terrified of the intimacy of a relationship. You knew how to go from 1 to 60 in 5 seconds or whatever it was, but you didn't know how to navigate in between. Yeah,
what do I do at number 7? Like, right. I don't even know.
Yeah. And so you're talking with Steve and you decide, I've never been to Las Vegas. We're really close to Las Vegas. And Steve says, well, let's go. Let's head down there. And you decide that you're going to go. And when your roommates hear about this, like, no, Tami, you don't want to do this. Really, you don't.
Well, I told him when we were getting married that we were going to just go to a chapel and get married. And
you
no, you can't. You have to go to the temple. You don't want this. You want to go to the temple. I know you. And so I played that up just to torment them a little bit.
Which is totally a move that I would have made. And then when Steve chides you and says, that was mean, I'm like, oh, I can see Steve saying that to me too. Yeah, I do things that I think are funny that turned out being mean to other people. Okay, I got to get that in check. But
they were a little mad, but they sat with that for a long time. So we were gone for 26 hours, and we get back, and the bishop is in our kitchen.
When you get back, your bishop's waiting for you because your roommate's told on you.
Yeah. So and I don't know how long he sat there, but because I guess before the sacrament, before the bread and water was even done being passed, the whole ward knew about it because my roommates were telling everyone. So,
yeah. And I do remember at, BYU at this time I don't know if this is actually that it happened a lot or it was just the stories that were really prevalent of students that would go down to Las Vegas, just get married for the weekend so they could have sex legally. And they're like, no, that's a loophole. You can't get away with that. If I can't get away with that, you can't get away with that either.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a thing.
Yeah.
I don't
You
think it
didn't
was
know.
entire family home evening groups, but it was big groups of people would go down and get married.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we went to Vegas and we didn't even do anything. We didn't hold hands.
Right.
You know, we slept in the car and brushed our teeth at a pit stop, a truck stop. And we went to this little chapel store and we bought a little fake ring. It was $1 and it just looked like a really cheap wedding ring. Mm-hmm. And I put this towel with this lacy fringe over my wrist and then just took a picture of that. Mm-hmm. So when we got back, I had the ring on. Mm. And so I was still perpetuating this thing, and the bishop's like, we got to talk. And Steve takes the bishop outside and tells him the truth, that we are not married. It was just a really long date. We were just hanging out. And
the bishop laughs when he hears it from Steve, right?
And goes home.
Like, okay,
like, I can finally go home to my family now.
Right.
Yeah. So my roommates get totally pissed when I tell them the truth. Of course, they're so mad because now they've told the whole ward and they look ridiculous, right?
Yeah, but they don't have any way of taking responsibility for their role in perpetuating this whole practical joke that really they started. Yeah, you just kind of went, oh, you're going to go this way? All right, let's see. Let's see. Yeah. Kind of nudge them along and play with them and tease them, and yeah.
So, that was fun. So I met Steve on my roommate's birthday. We had a surprise birthday for her. Mm-hmm. He was on the balcony looking out. He was the lookout on the balcony. And I was the lookout by the front door. And we would communicate with hand signals through the balcony window. And he was just kind of adorable. You know,
he kind of still is.
I know, right?
Yeah.
He had this kind of longer hair, which in Provo is like a sin, and he had sideburns. Oh my God.
Oh, and a beard, right?
Yeah, no beard at that time, just sideburns.
Oh, okay.
So, and his hair was really curly.
I've never seen Steve without a beard, so
and it touched his shoulders. Anyway, so that just the nature of that kind of rebellion. Yeah. If you can be like a believer but have your own identity and flavor and like not conform so much. Yeah. I was so appreciative of that. Yeah. I was drawn to that for sure. So, anyway, we got engaged in March and married in May. And that was a long engagement for Provo, tell you what.
Yeah. And I want to talk about that in a second, but there's one more passage from the book I want to read. Okay. And it's, you don't spend a lot of time, but your story is basically winding down at this point in the book, but there's this theme of judgment that you get with the roommates and the Las Vegas story. They're hypersensitive and very quick to come to judgments. So you get back to Detroit from being in Provo for a while. And you say, I arrive in Detroit on a Sunday morning. So we went straight to the church since my family was there. The youth seminary teacher was walking toward me in the hall during sacrament meeting. And she says to you, and you're wearing jeans or something. And she says, is that what they taught you to wear to church out in Utah? She asked, looking at my jeans and t-shirt. And you say, no, they taught me how to judge other people by what we're wearing. I said, mic drop. And she stopped and fumbled and apologized. Oh, I didn't mean to judge you, Tami. You say, sure, don't worry about it. But whether you mean to or not, you're so like that's what happens is you're so hyper aware of what everybody else is doing and making sure that everybody else is dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's. And that judgment just kind of creeps in unintentionally, but it's just there. And I love that you called her out on it and just did it in such a, like that's kind of like the New Testament Jesus way of rebuking someone, right? Right.
So, but if I had been at this point in my life a little less self-assured, right? If I had been reliant in any way on what others were thinking about me more than I was, because we all do it a little bit. Yeah, I might have been kind of shattered by that kind of treatment. Over time, getting little bits like that from people, it just wears away at your soul, right? Yeah. And so in saying something to her, I wanted it to not happen to somebody else. Like there was this there's just always been a need of protection against people like me, but also people who don't have my story, who just need a little more acceptance than that. That kind of.
Yeah. Well, even in Bloomington, I think I remember a time that you were doing something with the youth. I think Shaylee was part of this, and you were asked to cover your tattoo. You've got like a tattoo on your leg or something, like an ankle tattoo or something.
Yeah. Yeah, there was that. Well, and it was, okay, so I got all my tattoos and all my piercings before Gordon B. Hinckley ever said anything about it. Okay? So I was not breaking any rules. Like when I went to Utah before I got married, Steve and I went to a tattoo shop and I got a new tattoo. Like, because it wasn't explicitly said you couldn't have a tattoo. So why do I have to anyway? So, yeah. It's just that they wanted me to cover it. I think I was a counselor to the president at that time. Yeah. And then I was president before I left.
Yeah. I think that was a camp, like a girls' camp or youth camp or something like that. And Erica and Jake were there with you. And I just remember having that conversation with you guys. So then you mentioned you and Steve, you get married, and there's some details that I kind of intentionally skipped over until we got to this part, because when you first went back to that ward and you felt that warm lovingness and the bishop told you needed to have a disciplinary council, he also gave you a blessing.
Yeah, he did.
And in that blessing, he told you that within 2 years you would be married.
That's what he said.
And you
2
went,
years.
What?
I'd never met this guy, and he's giving me a blessing, and I appreciated those blessings. I felt like uplifted from those blessings. Like it gave me some additional strength, I felt like. And that was what their intention was. And so maybe it was a psychological thing, but nonetheless, like I felt good getting them. But he didn't even know me. And he said, you're going to be married in 2 years. And what? Like, I get married? So I intentionally did not date. I did not.
You wanted to prove him wrong.
A man. Because that is not going to happen. I'm going to prove him wrong.
Yeah. And then when you go to the ward in Michigan with Bishop Lowe, he gives you a blessing, and he tells you within a year and a half, you're going to get married.
And 18 to 24 months.
And these weren't
specifically said that.
And unless there's some kind of conspiracy going on where the bishops were colluding, you got to ask yourself, okay, what is, and then, you do. You meet Steve, you get married, and it fits that prophecy. And it's
21 months.
So what
21 months after my second bishop said it, my new dad.
Yeah.
And about 23 months or 20 something, I think 23 months after I met the first bishop.
Yeah.
So yeah, and there, you could also argue that
they might have been thinking about the Las Vegas wedding, the little ring in the chapel. That could have been it.
But you could argue that there's a general expectation for marriage at a certain age for a woman, right?
Sure,
you could say you're going to get married because this is what we do in the church, that kind of thing. But this was very specific and kind of terrorizing in a way. And you could think too, like I should have probably prepared myself in some ways, like maybe I should have gotten ready for that, but instead I ignored it and looked the other way and acted like it was never going to happen. Yeah. I could have used some prep time for sure.
Yeah. But it did. And like all marriages have their ups and downs. And I know you guys have your ups and downs too, but you're together, and like the life that you have. And I've been to your house in Orlando. It's beautiful. I am so envious of that screened pool in your backyard that keeps the mosquitoes out and the alligators maybe. And I had such even stronger affection for both you and Steve, and the way that you manage your lives after reading this than I even knew about before, and I had a lot before. Let me ask since it's been out since September, I'm assuming that your mom and dad, the Lows, have read it, and your brothers and sisters, and maybe even on your biological side, have they? Like what kind of response have you had from your family to this?
So in October, we had a reunion with the Lows. So it was my mom and dad and just the siblings. So not even spouses were invited to this one. So no grandchildren or anything. So it was the original 8 were invited. And my brother couldn't come, Gary, but everybody else was there. And I gave them all a copy if they hadn't already ordered it. Mm-hmm. And so they all read it. And this is fascinating. I mean, they're also very supportive. And the kids didn't really know all the details because they were 5 to 16 at the time.
Yeah.
But like the oldest, who was 16 then, she's read it with her daughter.
Oh, wow.
Who's not even in Young Women's yet.
And they're all still in the church and believing, and it's just working out great for them. Yeah.
Super Orthodox. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they all have this, I mean, the Lows are less formal about a lot of things. Mm-hmm. They're true believing, but they're sensitive and loving and all the good things. Yeah. They really are.
Yeah.
And I don't know about my original family. I don't know if they've read it. Probably not. And I don't know if they're interested. Like, they didn't care when I was in their family, right?
Another really poignant moment in the book is after, or like right before the adoption becomes official. You have to work with a social worker so that they can make sure that there isn't any like funny business going on with this family adopting a 22-year-old woman, and which might have served Joseph Smith well in Nauvoo at some point. But anyway, we can put that aside. The one of the things that you needed to do before this could be official was to notify your birth parents that you were being adopted. You never knew who your dad was, so you just put an article in the paper with the name of the guy on your birth certificate and said, "Hey, adopted." With your mom, you called her. Yeah. And your dad, Bishop Lowe, got on the other line so he could listen to this conversation.
Yeah. So he's upstairs. So adorable. He's upstairs on the phone and I'm down in the kitchen. And it's not a long conversation. And she wasn't nice or accepting, but she wasn't vicious either. She just didn't care. So I tell her, I'm going to be adopted into this new family. I needed to let you know. And she's like, well, why are you telling me?
Yeah. You're just going to do what you want to do anyway.
Yeah.
That's kind of vicious to me, Tami.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it is, but it's in the realm of neglect and totally not caring.
But going out of her way to make you know how little she cares about you, kind of thing.
I guess that's true.
But that was his reaction. That was your new dad, Bishop Lowe's reaction when he came down, and he said, "I've never heard a mother be that cold and uncaring to a child."
Yeah. He was so cute. He came down the stairs and his mouth is hanging open and his eyes are kind of buggy out. And he's telling, my mom, because she didn't hear anything. She's standing next to me. There's only 2 phones in the house. So back in the day. And he tells her, and I just sit, with that and recover. Right.
Yeah.
Even though it was a short conversation, there's something about her that just is so damaging to my soul.
Yeah.
Which is why it's a good thing I was kicked out, and it's a good thing I have a new family. Those things kind of never go away. But I can't, one of the first things people ask me when I tell them this story is, do you talk to her still? And there's a little bit of judgment in there. Like, she gave birth to you, somehow she taught you to tie your shoes and you don't talk to her and you've now joined another family. Like, how horrible of a child are you, but it's a complete self-preservation mode for me.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, a lot of people have said this in the ex-Mormon world, that the church really does a disservice by making a difficult environment for variety of perspectives in life. That's probably the nice way to say it. I think your experience, the way that it made you see life and value what you value, is something that could, and I'm sure has, influenced and helped a lot of people. I know it has with my daughter Shaylee. She's mentioned it, and just so, like, the things that you have to offer, and the things that other women have to offer, and other men too, and people that don't meet that top 10% of the families that do everything in the ward that you were talking about, that might feel like they don't have anything to offer. They don't, they're still making ripples on the smooth pool. They're making an impact in the world. I don't know. I really appreciate you and your experience, your willingness to share these things, your willingness to come on and talk about it. I hope that the Lows listen to this. I love them. I love them, and I don't begrudge them their Orthodox Mormon beliefs one iota, because look at what they did. Look at how they helped you and gave you what your family didn't, and then taught you how to give that to Dallin and Jackie and Steve, and it's so touching and inspiring.
Mm-hmm. They're the most amazing people. So I kind of rushed to get the book out so that I could give them all copies. Mm-hmm. I didn't know we were going to have this reunion, but I was thinking Christmas or something. I wanted them to have a copy of that. And it's a little awkward to share all these other things, but their response has been really good.
Yeah.
When I left the church, I have a family because I became Orthodox Mormon. So how complicated is that? So if I leave the church, then what happens with this new family? But they have not left me.
Yeah.
So in fact, when we had our gathering in Michigan in October, one of the days we had Father's blessings. And I got to tell you, like, my dad, he gave me the blessing about getting married, but he is a rock star in the realm of blessings. And he always tells me things that I treasure. Like, seriously, it's almost psychic, which is fascinating to talk about. But he gave me my blessing first because I'm the oldest. And I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was to the effect of, you've chosen not to stay in the church, and we love you, and God loves you, and we're proud of the mother and the wife that you are, and like those kinds of things, right? So there's the church and all of that crazy, but then there's this family. They're just pure and wonderful and loving.
Yeah.
Part of the problem with the first few years when you leave the church is separating out the nuggets of truth with everything else.
Right.
And they're my biggest nugget.
Yeah.
I love them.
And I don't think I've ever met them. I don't think they ever came, or maybe I might have, but I love them too. I love this. And, even as we were reminiscing on some of those names from that Bloomington ward, the Watsons and Katanis and Martha, and, there's so many, there are too many to name, just such wonderful, beautiful people that I wish I could express to all of them the appreciation that I have for the influence the silent influence that they had on me that I probably still haven't even recognized all and impact. Yeah. So anyway, making space for me, Tami.
Yeah.
A great book. Go ahead.
Thank you. There was one woman in Bloomington, totally Orthodox family. I'm not going to say who they are, but like on the tier of committed, the most committed family in the world, probably. And she told me that she had these thoughts or reactions to history, the history of the church. And she described it as putting it on a shelf. And that was the first time I heard that term. So she set it aside so that she could keep the life going, And I tried to do that. I just couldn't do it. And, I'm probably going to share the link for this with my family, and they've settled into my decision. But it's not an easy one. There's so many people who leave the church every year, and it's not an easy decision. It's very difficult, and it's painful to rip yourself out from an entrenched belief system like that. But I appreciate those who are still loving and kind to me. There's a lot of times when you leave too, you just don't see them anymore, all the people in the ward, because you're not in the same circle that they are in anymore. So just naturally, you just see them less. But then eventually they all kind of drop off, stop contacting you or whatever. So
it's there are choices that people make, and there's options that people have, and the church definitely has baked into its own doctrine hope. For, that just trust in the Lord, trust in the saving atonement of Jesus Christ, that he's going to love and he's going to take care of people, even who leave the church, even who you might see as sinning or something in some way, that there's hope. So kind of relax the judgment, relax the fear, trust in this thing. It sounds to me like that's where your family's at. That's where, Bishop and Sister Lowe are at with this. It's hard to do. It was a frustrating thing to bump into people who couldn't do that. And then my own inability to not judge people, cause that was, I can't look back at my reasons for leaving the church and blame it all on the church. I've got to take the responsibility for my role in it and my inability to do it. And the flawed, limited ways that I perceive things as well, and just go, look, the things that I found really valuable and still do find valuable in the messages of the church, I'm going to try and hold on to, and I'm going to try and do a better job of living that kind of Christ-like life, even if now I see Jesus Christ as a symbol and a character and a story rather than, like the real thing that I thought that it was before, and leave some space open that it's probably even different than, like what I think that it is. There may be even more to it than I can even see. But so it's all, it's all tangled up and trying to untangle it, trying to untie all of these knots. I don't want to say anything bad about,
no, I don't either. And a person's choice to stay or choice to believe in things, even when it's hard to do that, it's completely their right. I think that I've always, like, one of the threads in the story and like my life is I am entitled to make a choice for myself. Yeah. And it was late getting to that point, but once I finally got it, I've kind of stuck to that, no matter what the consequences. I want to be able to sit back and get it down into my soul and like feel okay about things, feel okay about what I'm doing. And it was kind of a reach to figure that out afterwards. But I, like my daughter now, she's 17 and a half. She's going to be 18 this summer. And we left the church just before she turned 12.
Yeah.
So she never got a young women's lesson, you know.
But she went to girls' camp.
She did. Oh
with
my
Emma.
goodness.
I remember with my daughter, who's just a year older than Jackie.
Yeah, we were just talking about this yesterday.
Yeah.
The impactful, horrible experience that was. So she frames things differently year to year because of her brain development. But right now, as it stands,
sure,
she sees that like the testimony meeting on Friday night, where the pressure to get up and say what you believe in and to cry, she did it. Like the bishop was urging her best friend was urging her, just go up and do it. And so she did. And she said what everybody else was saying, and she cried like everybody else was doing. And afterwards, everybody thought she was going to come to church again.
Yeah.
Because she had said she believes, you know.
Yeah.
But she got home and she was so upset. She felt like a liar. She said, I don't know why I said those things.
Well, because she wanted to be accepted, right? And it's made very clear. This is what you have to do in order to be accepted.
Yeah.
And that's what I meant earlier. For anybody of any age in the church, you know, that's really what I meant when I said earlier that you have to sacrifice your own truth and integrity for some people in some cases. If you feel like, I'm not sure if it's true. You know, like some people do get up and say that, but there's a social cost that goes with, like identifying yourself. Like, I'm going to put this scarlet letter on myself and wear it around.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like the lows have really held space for me even after I've left.
Yeah.
And the relationship really hasn't changed that much. My wish, of course, is that the church would hold space for all kinds of people and all differences and sexualities and genders and all of it, right?
Yeah.
They're a long way out from doing that, but so is our society in general. So
that's true. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Tami. This was awesome.
Times.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
I was really taken aback by your response to the book. Like, you just don't know how everybody's going to feel about it, you know? But what you said really just touched my heart, and I just wanted to say thank you.
Well, you touched my heart first, so thank you for doing that. We can thank each other.
Right.
All right. So, all right. So there you go. Making Space for Me by Tami Whiting. You can get it on Amazon. I'll put the link on the website. I hope you all go out and buy a copy of it. It's as great of a conversation as this was, and as much as you can tell Tami's personality coming out in the conversation, the book is even better. It's just fantastic. So I would encourage you all to go and get a copy for your friends and family members, and it's an incredible story. So I'm curious though, what did you take away from this? Because I'm sure that there's different people that listen to this and they hear different things, and like, what does it mean to you? So I'd like to know. So leave a comment on our website or send us an email at infantsonthrones@gmail.com. I'd really like to know what your takeaway was. And here's my takeaway.
I will survive. Yeah, as long as I know how to love, I know I'll be alive.
Okay. So, making space for ourselves, especially in a hostile world, it's kind of a team effort. I mean, even if you just reduce everything that you just heard to a constant pattern of action and reaction over and over and over again in all kinds of different shades and flavors and styles and intensities. You do something, I react. I do something, you react. And even when that something is nothing, we're all doing this together. The choices that we make in this cycle, that, you know, it's kind of remarkable to think about, but every single one of us is at the very center of the way that we perceive reality. We're at the center of all of this. And every single choice that we make, those choices determine the shape of the spaces that we create for ourselves. And even the level of hostility in the world that we're creating this is shaped and determined by collectively these choices that we're all making, the ways that we act, the ways that we react. And of course, we can't control how others act or react. And there's some question as to how much control we really even have over our own actions and reactions. But to some degree, at least, we have some agency, we have some choice. So with that idea in mind, I want to do something now that I haven't done in a very long time. Not in this form, anyway. I'd like to bear my testimony. Now, I used to do this on a pretty regular basis. You know, the first Sunday of every month for Fast and Testimony meeting, whether I got up and shared with my fellow ward members or not, or they got up and they shared with me, this was one of those things that we did. One of those action and reaction dances that I engaged in. And today, I'd like to do it again. I'd like to bear my testimony. And so I've got to try and remember the pattern and the cadence and the mood to set with that, because it's all part of that action. All right. I'd like to bear my testimony. I know that life is true. I know that pain and suffering exist in this world, and that every cloud has at least one silver lining, and often even more. And I know through my own trial and error of life experience that the search and discovery of those silver linings can make all the difference in how happy and connected and healthy I personally feel. I know that Joseph Smith was a prophet because he said that he was, and because many people, including many generations of my ancestors, believed what he said, and that belief restored hope and joy and meaning into their lives. I know that we humans are flawed, every single one of us, and often those flaws run deep. And those flaws are often themselves a result of the action-reaction dance created by others long before we ever entered the game. And these flaws influence the way that we in turn both act and react in this world. And for me, personally, I know that forgiveness and love and charity have carved out more peaceful spaces for me in my life than bitterness or anger or vitriol of any form ever has. I know that flexibility and tolerance and going with the flow have been healthier ways for me to exercise faith and love and charity than inflexibility, intolerance, or stubborn, arrogant rigidity of any kind. And I know this because I've tried them all. Sometimes still do. And I know with crystal clarity that the worth of every soul is great, that we cannot run faster than we have strength, that there is truly joy to be found in mourning with those who mourn and comforting those in need of comfort, and that life is a little brighter when I'm able to be grateful for all that life has to offer, even if I have to create and believe in fictions to discover that gratitude, to manufacture ways to be grateful, even for my enemies or for those who have spitefully used and abused me. For I've come to know with every fiber of my being that there truly must needs be opposition in all things, and that all these things shall give us experience, all of them. And the fruit of that experience, that the glory of God is intelligence. And this testimony I leave with you in the name of Tami Whiting and Bishop and Sister Lowe and their children and their children's children and QJ and silly girls Aaron and Kate, I think those were their names, and even creepy broken grandpa, and in the names of all the people that you heard about in this story and all the people that you didn't, and in the names of Jake and Tom and Matt and Scott and Randy and Bob and John and Heather and Allison and Olivia and Boyd K. Packer and Thomas S. Monson and Jonathan Haidt and Yuval Harari and Russell Brand and Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson and Alan Watts and Mr. Rogers and John, Paul, George, and Ringo And wow, that's a lot of men's names. So let's not forget Michelle Obama and Brene Brown and Zora Neale Hurston and my mom Debbie and my sister Missy and Tracy and Shaylee and Emma and Krista and Layla and Zoe and every guest we've ever chatted with and every submitter of every listener essay and every other listener who has ever been drawn for whatever reason and with whatever reaction to this podcast called Infants on Thrones. You have all made an impact on the world. Those impacts all have their good and their bad, their dark clouds and their silver linings. And you have all made an impact on me. And for that, I sincerely thank you. And I love you. And these words I leave with you in the name of all that is, or was, or ever will be. Amen.
Hi, this is Hillary.
Matthew, Ryan,
Carol,
Keith,
Ashley, and I like to play bingo online while listening to Infants on Thrones.
You can comment on this episode on the website, infantsonthrones.com.
And if you really like what you hear, give the Quorum a 5-star rating and write a short review on iTunes.
I did. Anyone for the closing prayer?
And if you like what you heard today and you like the direction this podcast is going and you want to experience even more of it, please consider joining us on Patreon, where for as little as $1 per episode, capped at whatever monthly budget you set, you can have a more immersive experience and help create what this podcast is, Infants on Thrones, with your action and reaction.
Thank you for listening to Infants on Thrones.